Good morning and welcome to our program, Native Wildflowers of Darien with Mike Tschebull. For over 35 years, Darien resident Mike has been rewilding his Darien backyard with native wildflowers. Also known as spring ephemerals, these are plants that are harbingers of spring with their fleeting but gorgeous blooms. Today you will learn about them and how you can have some too. Before we begin, I would like to mention that programs at Darien Library are made possible by the annual Friends of the Library campaign. We thank you for your support to make programs like this possible and our collections available to the community. Our presenter this morning is a native wildflower enthusiast who has been rewilding his backyard Darien woods with native wildflowers for over 35 years. A former finance guy who worked in New York City and abroad, his fascination with native wildflowers dates back to his youth, finding similar plants on his grandmother's farm in the Northeast. After purchasing his property in Darien, he first tackled the removal of invasive plants that had taken over the woods and replaced them with the lovely wildflowers that he will be showing in his presentation. A former docent at NYBG, please welcome Mike Tschebull.
Good morning. I live in the east end of Darien, which is fairly heavily wooded still. And we've got bobcats and coyotes, and we don't let our cat out at night. Let me advance this. I want to talk a little bit about the environment in which these ephemerals grow. I want to say that it's sort of a Zen experience to raise these because they are active from the end of March until early June. It's a very short period and they grow slowly. And it's taken me almost 40 years to have what I want in terms of wildflowers. Before I go further, I want to talk about what they need to grow. They need leaf litter and deadfall, really, because the micronutrients that these plants need are in, especially deadfall. So if you rake all the stuff out of your woods, no wildflowers. The other problem with wildflowers around here is there's been 350 years of grazing and cutting of trees and plowing up flat areas. So there are many parts of the town where there's woods, but there are virtually no wildflowers, and they've got to be reintroduced. You can see on the right the right of the screen, wildflowers blooming in April out of the leaf litter. We'll start with I've got things in more or less date order. The woods here are full of sedges of all kinds, and this is a sedge that has an interesting flower. You can see it. It looks like a bottle brush. The deer love the flowers, and no matter how much I spray them with something that keeps deer from eating them, the deer browse virtually all of them. On the right-hand side is a blue version. The left-hand side I introduced myself. The right-hand version came in probably through birds. If you have questions, ask me. Starting in early April, this particular little intensely white wildflower grows in my woods. I didn't introduce it. And it grows in masses in Selleck's Woods. And if you go into Selleck's Woods from the north end entrance and go down the path to the right, you will see banks of these wildflowers. It must have taken 100 years for these wildflowers this particular wildflower to become this numerous. Selleck's Woods has been grazed by deer, and it's not as, it doesn't have the wildflower population it had 40 years ago. And I'm not sure why, but some of it, I can't tell. I think the deer have done some of the damage. This is these are two color phases of a hepatica. I don't see this in the woods here anywhere. I don't know why, because it should be here. And I realize that if they grow well, you'll have many more flowers than I'm showing here. But it's a beautiful little plant. The deer do not eat it. Many of these plants have evolved with deer and are toxic to some level, and deer will avoid them. I'll show you which ones they avoid. This one they avoid. This is bloodroot. It's quite an early plant. There was none in my woods, but I realize I've seen it in 15 miles from here, so there's no reason it wouldn't be native here. You can see the intense, once again, early wildflowers are usually intensely white. You can see the leaf form on the right. I realize these plants grow well in different environments. The right-hand picture shows bloodroot on the south side of a large oak, so it's shielded from a north wind, and it gets a lot of sun, so it comes up 2 weeks earlier than other bloodroot plants in my woods. I think I've got 5 or 6 colonies of bloodroot, and they're all self-seeded. These plants are available for pollinators early on, so they have ecological value. This is it's called, its common name is wood poppy. It doesn't grow native here. It grows in the northeast quadrant of the U.S. and the New York Botanical Garden says in their wildflower garden, which I recommend you go visit, that that's what this would be included in their wildflower garden because it's native to the northeast quadrant. It's a beautiful plant. The deer don't eat it, but I can't grow it the way my picture is to the right. The left picture I got from a specialist. I can't produce that kind of plant on the left. This is a wonderful little plant. Its common name is twinleaf. You can see why. It has leaves that look like angel's wings. And it's another early, intensely white flower. It is also not browsed by deer. This is called squirrel corn. It's Dicentra cuculinaria. It is native to the Northeast. I planted this years ago, and I had a pretty good sized colony of it, and then it disappeared. Some of these plants will come and go. You'll never know why. This one has totally disappeared. You can see it was quite a healthy colony. Beautiful little plant.
So do you mark the ones that disappear so that in case they come back? I mean,
well, I know where they should be. A lot of these plants die out. I mean, bloodroot, for instance, will disappear in one place and then suddenly appear 30 feet away. I've got a little bit more than an acre of woods, and most of it is big oaks and big sweet gums. the fact that the interior of Connecticut, there are virtually no big trees. And when tree trimmers get employed here, they're always amazed to see how many big trees there are in this town. And it's hard to say why they weren't cut, but we've got a fair number of 150, 200-year-old oaks in town. This is another introduced plant which grows well here. It is really, it's a tuber, and it grows pretty well for me. That's the left picture is one of my Virginia bluebell colonies. Most of these plants need a fair amount of water. Some of them will grow on slopes where it's dry, but they need bright shade. They don't do well in deep shade, but they burn if they're exposed to too much direct sun. This is Virginia bluebells coming up in, as I say on the screen, late April. I'm out there looking for this stuff already. I'm already looking, and my wife, who's from Texas, says, "Why are you doing that?" And I say, "Well, because it's a sign of spring for me, and for her, spring is, March in Texas." This is a plant that is common in Celix woods. In the lower part of Celix woods where it's damper. It looks like, the plant looks like a white ash seedling. You can see it if you go into the Celix woods through the south entrance. You can see it along the trails. This is, I'm sorry, my pictures aren't better, but this is a lily, a beautiful lily. It's only about 4 inches high. It tilts down like many lilies. There's a large colony of these in Celix woods, and they don't bloom. Mine bloom, and I don't know why that is, but it's you will see this in most undisturbed woodlands. And it spreads by runners. I've got it all over the place. Yeah, it's, as I say, native in my woods. This is another plant that's fairly common. It was growing on the edge of my woods. It needs a fair amount of sunlight. It's also tiny, as I say before about these plants, intensely white. And it moves around. It doesn't stay in one place. And it is also not grazed. It's astounding how many of these plants have evolved with deer and don't get eaten. This is the native bleeding heart. It's not native here. I've had it for years, and it reseeds, so I know it does okay here, and it must, it's from somewhere in the Northeast. Pink. There's a hybridized version that's much larger that is sold in garden centers.
Question.
Excuse me?
Do you collect the seeds from the Desantra?
No, I let the ants do it. The ants are big spreaders of these seeds because they're looking for growth on the seed which they want to eat, and they take seeds back to their nests and drop them, and especially things like bloodroot. But many of these, the seed ends up being planted by ants. So I support them. This is a little lily, Myanthemum. And it has a little spiky flower that's only about 2 inches tall. Does it come? Does it? Yeah, you can see it on the screen. And it is a sign of when you see this, it's a sign of a healthy woodland. It needs, it can grow in varying levels of light, not intense light, but it grows in deep woods and it spreads all over the place. I think it was introduced into my woods and now it's all over the place. It's you know, 2 or 3 inches high, and I look for it when I'm in somebody else's woods. I look for this plant because, as I say, it's an indicator plant. This is calophyllum, is native here. I see it many places. I reintroduced it into my woods, and it spreads. The seeds turn. You can see green seeds on the right. They turn dark blue later in the season, and it reseeds. This is another down-facing lily, Eulalia cecifolia. I introduced it, as I said on the screen, and it spreads well. I've got it all over the place. The deer do not eat this one, possibly because it's only 6 inches tall. They want something more, you know, something to give them a little more bulk. So this doesn't get grazed. I think it's certainly eligible to be grazed. This is mayapple. You can see in the upper left slide the mayapple in bloom. As a kid, I remember eating the fruit. It's not toxic, but the plant is extremely toxic, and the deer will not have anything to do with it. It grows in intense light, in swampy areas where it gets enough water. The right-hand picture, upper right-hand picture, is a colony in my woods, which I planted decades ago, and you know, half a dozen plants, and it's spread. It's 20 feet wide, and it'll die down by June. Depending on the rainfall, by mid-June it'll have gone dormant. Most of these go dormant.
Is there a reason that a colony might die out? I used to have tons of it in my mother's woods growing up, and now when I walk her woods, there's very little of it still there.
There's when you walk in the woods, what?
When I was a child, it was all over the place, and now when I walk in her woods, there's very little of it still there, and I'm just curious why.
Yeah. Loss of leaf litter, loss of sticks and limbs, and grazing by deer, spraying trees with insecticides. But most of the stuff can be I too realized as a kid, I saw a lot more of this stuff than I do now.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I'm encouraging you to if you can do it, let leaf litter stay in place, and you can buy these wildflowers. There's a specialist native plant nursery in Southbury, where I sometimes buy things, but it's hard to buy this stuff. Very often it's not readily available. This is a Solomon seal. The deer love this. I have to spray it. There are several different sizes. It's seeded in here. As I say, often it's birds that bring the seeds in. These are in a woods fairly close to our house. This is, I don't see trillium in the woods here at all, but I know that they are apparently native to the area. This is a white one. It's got, left picture shows a plant that I think it's in my woods. I think it's maybe 15 years old, maybe more, and it will now produce 10 flowers. But that's how long it took it to get to this size. On the right is a trillium. I think it's in my daughter's woods. She lives outside of DC, and it's got 2 flowers. But it's an intensely, as I say, intensely white, as some of these are, which triggers insect interest. This is a common plant. You'll see this not in Selleck's Woods for some reason, but you'll see this in many areas here. It's a native geranium. It has nothing to do with polygonatum, the houseplant. And it seeds readily and spreads readily, and you can buy this one. It does okay in fairly intense light. And these are all perennials that I'm showing. This one spreads vegetatively and by seed. And it's, sort of rose colored. It's, as you can see, it's an early May plant. Here's a slightly later trillium, which I should find in the woods here, but I don't. It's an intensely dark red plant. Most of these flowers face down, so I held this flower stem up so whoever took the picture for me could do it. Why do we not see this here? I don't know. I know many of these trilliums bloom on a friend's property in Vermont, so I know they could bloom. They could grow and bloom here. This is the same red trillium with a seed pod, and they do reseed. So I do see them. I do see seedlings. The deer love this. The deer will nip these right off. This is an introduced trillium. I think both pictures are the same plant. The plant's been in place for at least 15 years. And so it's got multiple flowers. This one reseeds pretty well. It's from the Southern Appalachians, but I know it's loose in the woods in places like Michigan. So it can tolerate pretty cold conditions.
Did the deer eat that one as well?
I'm sorry?
Did the deer eat that particular trillium?
They don't eat this one. I don't know why.
Someone said they didn't like yellow flowers.
Maybe they're color sensitive. I've got deer coming through all the time, and I can approach them. I can get within 20 feet of a doe, and she'll just look at me. If I yell and scream, they'll leave.
Do deer eat just the blossoms, or do they eat the leaves?
Oh, they want the whole works. They don't care about the flowers. They want the leaves.
Oh, okay.
They're yeah, it's, I wish I could keep them out. This is another trillium with a little tiny upright red flower, and it spreads by runners. This is the south-facing area under a maple tree. It's been in place a long time too. You can see a white trillium blooming in front of it. On the left, you can see Virginia bluebells in the lower right of that picture. It's many of these trilliums have mottled leaves. They're gray and white or green and yellow spotted. This one will come out and be, it'll look like it does in the left screen, but by mid-May, it will have died back down again. This is a yellow cypripedium. It's a slipper orchid. And I've got it growing. It's native to this area. I've never seen it in the woods. It grows for me reasonably well, but not perfectly. On the right is a Southeast Asian slipper orchid that I raise indoors. So it's the same kind of flower. Years ago, there is a beautiful rose-colored cypripedium called Cypripedium macaulay. And yeah, 40 years ago, it was blooming in Salix Woods. And it's all gone, completely disappeared. This gets grazed. For years, there were no deer below the turnpike in Darien. And then they figured out how to go through the underpasses, and ever since we've had plenty of deer south of the turnpike. This is called false Solomon seal. It's another lily. I introduced it, but it seeds in also. It's got a beautiful flower. It's a deer favorite. If they can find this and I don't spray it, and I spray some of these plants I know the deer are going to eat, and sometimes I can save them. It depends on the deer load. You know, how many deer have you got? Deer will not eat certain tree seedlings. They will not eat tulip tree. They will not eat sweet gum. They don't like shadbush. They don't like native cherries. But everything else is fair game for deer. This is a plant. It's a beautiful little plant. Once again, it's not very tall. It's blooming late in the spring. And I haven't seen it for a couple of years. I don't know why it's disappeared on me. Maybe it's there and I just haven't seen it. But it's a tiny, tiny flower. The flower's, I don't know, 5/8 of an inch wide. Intensely blue, called commonly blue-eyed grass. It's in the iris family. This is a plant that needs sun, not intense sun, but needs more sun than most wildflowers. It also gets grazed by deer. I have to spray it, otherwise I won't have any. This is an ericaceae.
Mike, we have a question.
Could you just tell me what that the little tiny blue thing was again? 'Cause I
Its common name is blue-eyed grass.
what's the Latin?
Hold on, let's go
Don't worry
back.
about it, I can find it.
Yeah,
Blue-eyed grass.
yeah. I've never seen it for sale, but I've never tried to buy it.
Darien gardeners tended to be selling it last year, it was like, wow.
They were, yeah. It's hard to kill, but it disappears. And many of these plants simply disappear. You don't know why they disappear. This plant is another indicator of a healthy woodland. I didn't know what it was for years, and it has, you can see the flowers. It has late in the season these little white hanging flowers on upright stems, shiny leaves. It like many cypripediums, you can't transplant this. I've got it all through my woods. It grows best under conifers. It likes acid soil. Most of these do acid soil conditions. But anyway, I love this plant. But I do know it does transplant.
Mike, does that get grazed by the too?
Was
Did the, I can't tell, do the deer like that plant?
No, they don't. Ericaceae, the whole family is mountain laurels. A lot of them are not some of it has to do with size. The deer would rather browse if they can. As well, can see. I've got it along the driveway. And all, it will not grow dense, so that they grow, but it won't. It's like it's a late season. And they get spread by, as they say, I am going to switch here a little bit to the concept of a meadow garden. The Audubon Center in Greenwich has a pretty good meadow garden, and it inspired me years ago to try and do the same. And I have in front of my woods, I have a meadow garden. It's about 15 feet wide by maybe 35 feet long, and it's got things like goldenrod left, and cardinal flower right, which is a lobelia. The deer will not eat goldenrod, but they love cardinal flower, and I have to spray it. The other plants, dominant plants in my meadow garden and in most meadow gardens are Joe Pieweed, which you see on the left, which deer love also, and on the right, brown-eyed Susan, and an aster, which is native here. The deer love the aster, not the rudbeckia. And I am happy to field questions. Anybody got any questions? Ask me.
I have a quick question. Is there any app that people use, you may have covered this because I came in late, but to identify these flowers in our gardens?
There is. Yeah, my wife uses an app to identify plants. Oh, yeah. I don't know what it is because I don't use one.
I just picture this too.
Picture this.
It's sometimes wrong, but it's often right.
Yeah,
Close enough.
you point your cell phone at it and click, and it will pull up similars. Oh, sure. But
I have a question, Mike. What are you spraying on the?
I've been through several different types, and I now use something called Deer Off.
That's what I use, yeah.
Yeah, Deer Off, it doesn't clog my sprayer, and the deer don't like it. How often I use it. Lots of times deer can adapt to these sprays, but they can't adapt to this one. I just have to spray things. Deer love azaleas, and I've got azaleas I have to spray, native azaleas. I have to spray them, every 2 weeks, or otherwise they'll browse them to nothing.
I make a spray with raw garlic, raw egg, and hot pepper sauce. and water. That
Yeah.
works well too.
Yeah, you
So I
you
alternate between that and deer off.
yeah, you can do that, but as they say, the deer are awfully hungry, and there are a lot of them. They come right up to our back door.
Oh, yeah.
And I asked the town at one point. I said, "Town, could you go back to archery in the woodlands? There used to be they'd clear out Salix woods and have archers come in and shoot the deer. No more." And so we've got many more deer than we had 25 years ago, or 20 years ago. Yes.
I kept trying to grow rudbeckia when I moved by 5 Mile River, and something kept eating it. It would never come up. Was
That's
it
strange. Yeah, because
groundhogs or?
they don't, the deer don't browse it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't deer because I didn't have deer, but it was some other animal or something. I think it was groundhogs.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Those are even worse than deer.
There's really nothing you can do about that, though, right?
Very true.
There is a rabbit spray.
Oh, what?
There is a rabbit spray,
Oh.
which it's a different composition from the one I use for deer. And you can try that. But boy, I've got to say, my rudbeckia never gets touched.
I know, friends would give me rudbeckia. I'd plant it and it would never come.
It needs sunlight for one thing.
Yeah, I did.
It needs a lot of sun.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
Maybe what I'm talking
I
about.
finally gave up.
Try it in the sun. Do you have a sunny spot?
Yeah, I mean, there's reasonable sun.
Yeah.
It's not total.
It needs 6 or 7 hours of sun a day at least. Otherwise, it won't grow.
Okay, that might have just been it then, maybe. It's too shady.
Yeah, this keeps me occupied and out of trouble to get involved in all this.
And a form of therapy.
Of course it is. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a Zen experience here. Everything goes very slowly, and you've got to adjust to things not moving quickly. Okay, well, thank you.
Couple more questions.
No, I'm happy to answer
So quick
questions.
question, didn't the town used to have a deer committee or something like that?
Say again?
A deer committee or something like that? No,
I do think so. I think Ken Adolph used to run, used to be.
What was that?
I can't remember off the top of my head. There was a commission.
Oh, yeah, there was.
What was it called, and why don't they have it anymore?
Yeah, it was, I remember the group, and I talked to them, and I said, can you come in and set up a blind and shoot deer? And they came and looked, and they said, no, we can't do that. I talked to the state a couple years ago and said, can you do this? And they said, absolutely, we can do this. We'll strap a blind to a tree on the edge of your woods, and we will shoot down with arrows. But you've got to lure the deer in with corn. And I did that, and the Canadian geese ate all the corn. And so it never worked. I can call them back because I realized how to keep the deer from eating the corn, but I just haven't done it. You know.
Of all the plans that you talked about today, what would be your tried and true plan that you would recommend if someone was just starting out?
Bloodroot.
Bloodroot, okay.
Yeah, bloodroot is pretty durable and it reseeds, but it needs, semi sun, and it needs leaf litter, and it needs some level of moisture. But I've got it all over the place.
And with your leaf litter, you don't do anything. You never remove it. It just
leave it in place.
Yeah. So it just sort of dissolves or.
Yeah, it acidifies the soil because most of it is beech and oak, and they're acid leaves and they don't disintegrate. And my lawn guy will dump leaves in part of and rake them around in part of my area, my woods where the wind blows the soil bare. So, yeah, I use all my leaves. My leaves don't go out in bags or to the dump.
And the trees in your woods are oaks, beeches,
Birches, sweet gums, tulip trees, 2 kinds of wild cherry.
any conifers?
I'm sorry?
Any conifers, evergreens?
Yeah, I've got I've got a couple of white pines. I'll tell you what I've got. I've got about 25 hemlocks. And the only way I can keep them alive is have the trunks sprayed every spring with a systemic that keeps the adelgid from destroying hemlocks. And I realize that the arborist I use has a lot of clients in town because I see the hemlocks that are still green and growing. So you can have hemlocks. You just have to have them sprayed every year. And so my arborist, his name is Paul Quick, and his firm is called Orchard Tree, and he's really, really good. I've known him for years. And there's a current scourge killing beech trees. And Paul has learned from the state what it is, and he thinks it's a nematode that attacks the beech buds just before they open, and he's going to spray them this year and see if my beech will survive. I've got a beech that's treated well, and it has survived this nematode attack for years. But there's a big beech at the DCA, huge native beech that has been almost totally defoliated. I don't know if it's going to survive or not. It's close to the entrance. And that's what I watch. I watch that beech to see if it'll, and the beeches in the woods in Waveney are being decimated. So, yeah, there are all kinds of things that are killing trees. The white ash is another one that has to be sprayed, otherwise you won't have any. So yeah, this keeps me, out of trouble. I get all involved in this stuff. I should have gone to college and gotten involved in forestry right away, but I didn't do it.
But you're sharing it now.
Yeah, I can do it. I can do it as an amateur. Yeah.